Hi there, Karen Greenhouse. These are our mini math lessons for the day. And today we're kind of focusing on maybe Algebra 2 concepts, but it's really about applying formulas. So students are going to get formulas, and it's basically reading situations and knowing what part of the formula they need to place a number in order to answer the question. So they're going to be looking at the formulas and using some calculations to plug things in. They're going to look at tables and they're going to look at graphs. So it's sort of a application of formulas. So again, I'm using Classpad.net, free tool. If you don't have an account, I recommend you sign up for one. It's free, but that way you can save the activities that you're working in or your work that you've done. Or if you want, you can just modify it. Maybe you don't like all the questions. Maybe you don't want the students having to be basically handheld as it goes through, because that's sort of what these activities are. It's a little bit more directed, not self-directed, but directed. So here's the first one, and it's about annuity, figuring out how much money is going to be after a certain amount of money has been invested, certain interest rates, and a certain number of years, right? So here's this formula, and different things, depending on the question, are going to be given and not given, and they're going to have to figure it out. So the first set of questions is basically, what is the annuity? And we're changing the interest rate. So basically, if you look back at this formula, the I is being changed. When we put it into our equation sticky here, you'll notice that it's an X. So basically, they can evaluate it a couple of different ways. They could pull up a calculator sticky. There we go. And plug it in, so like 1,000, well, let's just do it, right? So 1,000, and then X is the interest rate. So for the first question, it's 0.025, and then it's 1 plus 0.025 raised to the 5 years, right? So I'm just plugging the things I've been given into the formula and then evaluating it. So this is one way to do it. Now we do need another set of parentheses there. So then when I hit execute, I'm going to get a solution. So the question is how much money? So that's after 5 years. So that's one way they could do the problem. They could also just, here is, if you notice, a table of values. I could, X represents my interest rate. So I could quickly simply type in the interest rate, and here is my solution here. So lots of different ways to do it. I could graph it and find the point on the graph. So different ways to apply, and so they're going to see different representations of that. So then we come down here, same type of thing. Here's a table, here's the thing. You can do it at equations, you could do it by plugging things in, you could do it by changing in the table of values. Or now we're going to come to another situation. Here's a graph of the situation. So here's that formula again. So notice this time we have the interest rates given, and the questions all pertain to the different years, how long you are investing. So if you notice, we could also use a table here, and if we click on the table, this represents the outcome and the value there. So lots of different ways that they can then apply this, and you'll notice that we come down, we get some different formulas. So the whole point of this activity is learning how to interpret the questions being asked, use a formula, and to look at different representations of that, so graphical, equation, table, to find specific values at certain times. So that's this first activity. The second activity is very similar. This results in, this is about volume and area. So again, we actually have 3 different formulas. So depending on the question, they're going to be using one of these 3 formulas, and their descriptions of the variables are described here. And so again, and I want to point out that this one actually shows them how they could use their graph to create a point. So they take a formula and they plug it into the equation. They graph it, so you get a graphical representation of the formula at that specific value, and then you can move along the graph to find specific values. So that's what's going on here. They're going to take a formula. So if you look, we're looking at this formula. So we would do, I think it was 1.57. and it was x squared. And I have an extra set of parentheses that I don't need there. And then I believe now we're plugging in the 50. So here's our graph. We could change the zoom. I'm not going to do that now, but now I can either use this and move things along to try to answer my question, or once I type in the formula, I can pull up a table of values and use the table of values. So lots of different ways. I could calculate it out. I could look at the graph of the equation. I could look at the table of values. So that's where we're going with these activities here. So this is very similar. They're going to be comparing, and then they're going to do some different formulas here. So it's a lot of determining which formula makes sense, what's missing from the formula, calculating it out, looking at the graphical representation, and looking at the table of values to help you answer questions about those things.